I woke up at 7:03 a.m. There was no sound, no alarm, no sun yet. For the first few seconds, I thought maybe I'd woken up before everything began, that I'd accidentally beaten the world to the punch. But it felt different than that. I couldn't hear anything. No birds, no rumble from the fridge, no whir of cars outside. My ears rang faintly with silence. I reached for my phone. It blinked on, 8:16 a.m. I frowned. That wasn't possible. The room still looked like pre-dawn. The dim light outside didn't match what 8 a.m. usually looked like. Something felt off in the light itself, like it was an imitation of morning rather than the real thing. I went to the kitchen. The microwave, oven clock, and the tiny analog clock above the sink all said 7:03. Still 7:03. Even the smartwatch I hadn't worn in days, lying on the counter, showed the same thing when I tapped it. I tried checking the time on my laptop. It said 8:17 a.m., then flashed, flickered, and jumped to 7:03. I stood there for a while, half-dressed, holding a spoon I'd intended to use for cereal, watching the digits hold steady like they were locked into place by something larger than electricity. I looked out the window. The street was frozen. There were no people, no dogs, no trash trucks or runners with headphones. A red car sat in the middle of the intersection, engine running. The exhaust puffed into the air but didn't drift. It just floated, like steam in a photograph. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear anything. I got dressed and went outside, just to make sure I wasn't dreaming. The moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, something in the air shifted. It felt like walking underwater without the weight. Everything was soft, dull. The trees didn't sway. The grass was too green. The shadows were too still. I walked 2 blocks to the cafe I always went to. The door was locked. Lights off. But a cup of coffee sat on one of the outside tables, steam rising steadily. Not fading. Just rising in a perfect, uninterrupted column. As if held in place by invisible wires. I sat on a bench and waited for people. For anyone. Nothing. Eventually, I went back home and opened every clock device I had. They were split. Half of them set times in the future, 10:04, 11:09, 12:22, while the others stayed locked on 7:03, like they had given up on keeping time altogether. I tried to sleep. Maybe that would reset whatever this was. That night, I dreamed in static. The dream was pale and mechanical. My bedroom had become a massive cathedral of clocks, each one different. Cuckoo clocks, digital alarm clocks, wristwatches the size of washing machines. They spun backward. Some floated. Some ticked without moving. Some whispered in tongues I couldn't understand. A deep voice, made of metal and wind, said from nowhere, "You are leaking." I woke up gasping. My pillow was soaked. My nose bled just a little, drying in a line down to my upper lip. I sat up and looked at the window. The sky looked artificial. The sunrise hadn't progressed. It had been holding the same eerie hue for what felt like hours. I stood and walked to the bathroom. My reflection blinked a full second after I did. I stared at it for several minutes. It didn't move. Eventually, it smiled. I didn't. I fell backward, knocking the towel rack off the wall. I crawled away, trembling, and slammed the door shut. I started recording videos on my phone. Me brushing my teeth. Me pacing the hall. Me reading a book. When I played them back, I noticed glitches. Jumps. Freezes. On one recording, I vanished entirely for 3 minutes and then reappeared, eyes wide open, standing perfectly still. I began to lose track of days. I couldn't sleep anymore. The clocks kept jumping. Some showed numbers that didn't exist. 26:91. 3 hours 72 minutes. My phone updated at random, telling me it was next week, last month, 1982. Then, one night, I heard a knock. Not on the door. From inside the fridge. I opened it slowly. Inside was an eye, blinking up from behind the orange juice carton. I closed it. Walked away. The knocking began again. Louder. From behind the mirror. Beneath the floor. Inside my phone. A voice began whispering every time I neared any clock.
Borrowed time. Stolen time. You must pay it back.
I started seeing other versions of myself. One crouched in the corner of the ceiling. Another pacing the hallway, muttering numbers. One slept on the ceiling, upside down, with a content smile. I locked them in rooms. They always came back. Then the girl appeared, pale, eyes like static, hair floating around her head like she was underwater.
You're overusing.
She said.
Time doesn't like that.
What am I supposed to do? I asked. She pointed behind me. I turned around and saw nothing. When I looked back, she was gone. That night, the clock stopped entirely. All of them. My phone died and refused to charge. My reflection no longer moved. It just watched me. I tried leaving the city. I drove for hours. The highway never ended. Exit signs repeated. The gas gauge never changed. I arrived back home without realizing I had turned around. There was someone waiting inside. Me. Clean-shaven, well-dressed, smiling. You didn't use it right, he said, so I'm taking it from here. He stepped forward. I stepped back. The world went dark. Now I'm here, outside the seconds, behind the minutes, stuck in a gap between ticks. Time doesn't move here, but I do. I walk, and walk, through frozen fields, past paused conversations, through dinners where no one blinks. I am the echo you feel when you think of a task you never completed, the unease when you feel late but aren't, the pressure behind your eyes when you stare at a clock that doesn't seem to move. I am the time you didn't use. And I'm not alone anymore.